is time to engage. Guys, we are talking about episode 209 of the Orville, Identity Part 2, and putting it up against episode 207 of Discovery, Light and Shadows. So if you haven't seen these episodes yet, I guess you're going to find out everything you need to know about them right now, but I'd go watch them. Yeah. So, Sonia, Vanya, you guys ready to get into this?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, so, shit, where do we even start? Okay, let's start with Light and Shadows. Okay. Let's talk about the fact that we finally got to see Spock. Vanya, did Spock deliver for you after all of this lead up and fake out and lead up, and there he is babbling in a cave? What did you think?
No, it just the it's not that it mattered how he showed up. It's how the evolution of how he showed up, right? It's the build to it that was just so overly blown up, and the anticipation was built up so much that it kind of fell flat once we finally saw him. Because we also know what he looks like. Like, it's not like we're all on the internet. We know
he's got a beard.
We know what Ethan Peck looks like as Spock. So we're not going to be surprised by that. We're not even really going to be surprised that he was acting weird, because we have evidence of that from his logs from before. And then I felt like Amanda was like, oh, I have him hidden, all hand twisting, and then she was just like, twist my rubber arm, come on, Michael, let's get to the caves. Like, it didn't really take much for it to happen. Like, I thought there would be another scene where she tries to have to convince her, or Burnham finds her,
or like trapped her,
or finds him herself. That, you know, maybe somewhere unexpected, you know, like that would have been, even just to give that level of, you know, intrigue would have been better, because they've been just talking about, oh, are we going to find Spock? And he's just there at home. Yeah.
Always the last place you look. It's like in Bridesmaids. You're like, oh, wait, she's just in her apartment. What did you think, Sonia? Was this
I thought
Star Trek Bridesmaids?
I thought that I don't think I disliked it.
No, I didn't dislike it. I just,
Okay, you didn't dislike it either. It just wasn't, maybe it's disappointing. It was disappointing.
It didn't have an impact.
I thought, and we've always known that Spock's half-human side has sometimes sabotaged him, right? It's gotten in the way of things. But I found that the human side of him, getting him to that point where he's unraveling, I thought, and because they're saying it's because he saw the red angels and the signals, I found that implausible, and so that's why the unraveling Spock was not convincing. Although I was really happy to see him, and I did like the way Burnham reacted to him.
See, for me, I thought the fact that the cage version of Spock doesn't totally line up with the rest of the original series Spock. I like that we're getting him in some busted, screwed up form, because something needs to make him into who we'll see 13 years after the cage. Okay. So for me, the fact that it was like, oh, we're chasing this ship and it's not him, and we're chasing this and it's not him, all that sort of high action that we got, resulting in, well, I'm just going to go home and see him, was a nice, like, subversion. There was no bigger way to see him, so we had to see him in a smaller way. So it did work for me in that way. On the topic of watching characters change, what did we think about watching Isaac's switch? Oh. Did you like where it went, Sonia, or was it too predictable? Did you not even see it coming?
Oh no, I was hoping it would happen, and it was completely satisfying. It was one of those things, it's one of those sort of stock, when it comes to Star Trek, right? It's not unusual for us to see this storyline and this happen. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I love that it had to do with Tyler. And no, I enjoyed that. I have no problem with it.
You?
I have no problem. Sorry, Vanya.
I feel like I wore black today because I'm going to be bad. Like, I'm like evil Vanya.
You just drop a little mustache.
Yeah, I just have to like fill it. So, no, it's not that I didn't like it. Again, it's like, I liked it again, but it's totally predictable. Like, we had already said that it was going to happen.
Yes.
Because there was no way around it. There's no way out of it. So it's like, either you trash the character, you get rid of him and he's evil all the way through and they find another way to defeat them, or he comes over to their side, the Union side. And yeah, it's really lovely, sweet that it was Tyler. Like that's great. That's good writing, but it's also like very easy. Like
It was easy.
because the one thing I did like about it is like, all the complaining that we did about them having a relationship, or him and Claire, it actually was helpful. It's helpful to the overall kind of evolution. Again, I'm using that word of the storyline, where that's the thing that actually makes him help. But again, predictable.
Yeah.
But that's fine. Predictability is not always bad.
No, not in something like this.
Yeah.
Well, I was hoping that the fact that he was made after the genocide would somehow factor in a more tangible way than just the primary telling him, you don't get it because you didn't see it firsthand. It's just in your memory banks. But as a robot, that's
matter,
all
right?
that... A memory is just data. Whether you acquired it with your own blue light bulbs or got them through someone else's red-orange light bulbs, it doesn't really matter. A memory is data.
And it's interesting to me that it's actually hard to imagine Isaac being different based on what we know about
what Kaylons are.
Kaylons are. But I totally bought it.
Yeah.
I totally bought into it, even though that wasn't really plausible either. He wasn't like Data. He was different. Data reacting those ways. Well, I don't even know if Data ever did that. Maybe I shouldn't be comparing the two. But I have to say, even though it was implausible, I bought it. I enjoyed
let's compare Kaylons and Cylons for a second. Because we did not see a single walking around Kaylon on any ship but the Orville. Do we think that the red ball sphere giant ships and the little fighter ships, do we think that those are Cylon style raiders that have their own like Kaylon brains, or are there actual Kaylons walking around on those ships, do you think?
I don't know. I can't tell. Like I thought that for a while, like that they're just on their own. I even thought maybe they might shut down when he shut down the rest of the Kaylons, but I guess not. It didn't work like that. So maybe there are actual like Kaylons on there, and like, you know, I thought it might.
Who are different? That's right. That's what I thought. Now what's going to happen?
Or there's a form of Kaylon, like what you're saying. I don't know.
And so because they shut down. Isaac shut down at the same time, right? Because they're all connected.
Because they did like
so
an EMP on the whole ship.
Yeah. So he's awake again. He's functioning again. So what does it mean for other Kaylons?
Yeah,
you know, what's going to happen now?
Any of the Kaylons on that ship are just like scrap metal unless they turn them back on, essentially. I mean, I was surprised that Ty didn't come up with the idea of putting Isaac in a Faraday cage that an EMP wouldn't penetrate, because you just put him in the little box, the EMP wouldn't hit him, and he'd be fine, because Ty's brilliant. But that didn't happen. One thing I thought was interesting was that the primary was not treated like the Borg Queen. That when the primary shut down, or was beheaded and everyone was zapped, it did not break the system. They didn't create a new primary. There was no discussion of who's in charge now. And they don't seem to have Wi-Fi. None of these creatures are connected. They have to like modem sound at one another to discuss things in their own language.
It seems like everything they do know about what Isaac knows is because of the download that they had done from him, but not because they're constantly being updated from each other about their information. That's another thing why I found that thing, how he turns to the Union side. I thought it would be like because he realized he evolved, and that he knows that humans have evolved from where they're from, and that his own people evolved from where they were. So I thought that would be more of the explanation, and then, but they obviously have a lot of, they're obviously not as advanced as they think they are.
That's right.
You know what I mean?
It seems that way. It also seems like they have never advanced. Isaac looks exactly like all of the versions of them that were made by humans. I mean, unless there was some kind of leap forward that all of the Kaylons did in order to rise up against their creators, and then they were like, yeah, we're perfect now, and we're going to stay like this. There's no sense that they continued to perfect themselves, not on the outside.
I think that's what it is, though. I think they thought that they reached a level of perfection. Now they want to wipe everybody out at that level. But maybe that's how the biological life forms will overcome. That will be the thing that overcomes, because they continue to evolve where they're stuck.
Yes.
And that will be... I'm trying to write it already, but I'm just like thinking maybe that's the thing, that everybody else is advancing where they're not.
Yeah. Now, there were some real like Wolf 359 moments in this that made me feel like we were seeing the kind of Borg battle that we never got to see in Best of Both Worlds, and we got a glimpse of in Emissary at the beginning of Deep Space Nine.
Yeah.
But we never really saw how that battle went from beginning to end. And so this felt like if the Romulans had shown up at the right time at Wolf 359, and they had somehow managed to overcome that cube.
That's so weird. I thought the exact same thing.
Well, I mean, the color schemes and the, like, we're the bad guys.
Yeah, it
with
also
green ships.
Yeah, it's also reminding me how the Romulans are also, like, in Deep Space Nine against the Dominion.
Yes.
How they become allies.
Yeah.
You know, but this is like if they became allies during the Borg.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this idea that did the Romulans have any interaction with the Borg beyond what was happening in the neutral zone? Like, why didn't the Romulans get involved in Wolf 359? It just seems like a terrible, short-sighted choice. What the Krill did here is exactly the right thing. Mm-hmm. You could sit back and watch your enemies get destroyed by this superior force, but you better believe they're coming after you next.
Yeah. Well, maybe the consultants and the people that work on or the Orville that are Star Trek writers, maybe they're like, oh, this is our second chance to do it this way. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's such a, like, what if Elseworlds version of the Wolf 359 attack in that way. Let's talk about ship design a little bit. It makes a lot of sense to me that all of the Union ships are made out of parts that are pretty interchangeable. You know, when you need to fix an Excelsior and all you've got is a Nebula, those aren't really compatible bits. They're from, like, they're 2 generations apart. But I feel like it worked against us as viewers. Because I just saw a bunch of ships that look the same fighting with ships that look the same. These ones have 2 quantum engines. These ones have 3. Some of them seemed absolutely gargantuan. Yeah. But I couldn't tell if they were just in the foreground. Like, did you feel like you had any sense of the geography of this battle because of these ship designs?
Yeah, it wasn't compelling to me. It didn't. Yes, Matt. I found that it all kind of blurred the way that it was presented visually.
It reminded me of like a Star Wars Episode 1, 2, 3 space battle, where it's like, this is maximalism. The screen is filled with explosions and excitement, and I can't tell a lick what's going on.
I thought of Star Wars a lot when I was watching that too, and I agree. Like, they didn't look different enough. That's what I like about the battles that we've got a glimpse of in Star Trek, is that the ships look very different, and you're like, oh, this ship, it looks like it has power. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, this one's like gonna be
when the really Defiant comes in, and then when the Galaxy like soars in, they have different ways of behaving.
Exactly, and then you're like, oh, this is gonna be a real gunfight here because this, you know, and you want to see like the different varying things that they can do. So I felt like it, for a show that seems to have had a lot of imagination. Yeah. That's one area where they lacked imagination. Yeah. Even with the Krill ships when they came, everything was like just
all these identical battle cruisers show up, and then these identical fighters come out.
Yeah,
I did really enjoy the Top Gun moment when they're just looking at each other across the way. It was very good.
I was just like, no points for second best, boys.
No points for second best. It was really fun, and it was nice to see him get to pilot that Krill ship again because he knows how to do that.
It's cool. Yeah, it's cool that they threw back to that, and I like the idea that they keep always showing us how Gordon is such a great pilot, like how great a pilot he is.
And this is like a multi-season arc of a single skill. And I think that is very cool. Like, we're getting to see this growth in him as a professional. We've seen him try to get command so that he can get some chicks, but we've also seen him be good at what he's good at, which is learning new ships and how they fly, and just being a great pilot.
You do get a lot in the Orville, I'd say, like a lot of competency porn, for sure. Like, you know, remember when you get to see like how Geordi evolved as an engineer, you know, where like he was just like
from helmsman.
Yeah, and then all of a sudden he was like the chief engineer, and then but you got to see how awesome he was. Like, you know, he's a quick thinker. He thinks outside the box. Yeah, I like seeing that.
Even Yaffet came through.
Yaffet. Now, definitely. On the topic of great pilots, we got to see some like cowboy Captain Pike. Yeah. What did we think about getting to see him like take control of the vessel and then, you know, chair outranks badge? That moment where Tyler was like going to throw a switch and was like, My switch, you bastard. Like, what did you think about getting to see Cowboy
I'm embarrassed.
Pike?
I feel like I'm blushing. So every time I talk about Pike, I'm like, he's so dreamy.
Yeah.
I agree, very dreamy.
Don't know. I don't know if I'm judging him right because I feel like I'm distracted. I did like to see even their interaction. Yeah, on the bridge. I'm like, man, these badges, this black badge thing.
You gotta stop throwing that shit around.
Stop taking it off. Keep it on your body.
Yeah.
And it's way more valuable than theirs. So like, make sure you keep it there.
And the fact that badge technology from Section 31 simply has never changed in 100 years. It pops off, pops on, makes the same sound. Everything about that. It's like the marimba ring on your phone if it lasted 100 years. Come on. It's so weird. Like, but no taste
the way
change.
he took it off, I was just like this machismo. They were both like swinging them, at each other. But I feel like Pike, he's
getting used to having some commander stroll on in and then just like stare him down on the bridge.
Yeah, there's so many commanders.
Yeah.
We'll get to it in the end. Ariam.
Well, talking about commanders, consider the fact that when the USS Enterprise goes on its maiden voyage to Farpoint, it's like lieutenant, 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 lieutenant. Everyone's a lieutenant. The most important flagship imaginable. And yet Discovery, this ship that's investigating mushrooms, is like commanders all the way down.
Yeah.
Everyone on the bridge is
so
a commander.
Ships.
Half the people you walk by in the hallways are commanders. This is like most of the captains in 3 years, all live on this ship.
Yes, that's right. They're right beneath captain.
Yeah, this seems a bit nuts, right?
Mm-hmm. I agree.
Yeah, they're just throwing that around, and then
Although I guess Tyler's specialist Tyler now. There's a lot of specialists kicking around on Discovery.
But then it's weird almost among all these commanders to just hear Lieutenant Spock, and you're just like, Spock's
what an underachiever!
Yeah. Like, work your way up there, buddy.
You might as well be Ensign Spock. God.
Exactly. It's jarring, right?
Yeah.
To hear that,
Maybe that's why he goes by Mr. Spock. He doesn't want anybody talking about how he's really just under-delivering on the planet of captains.
He's well behind his peers. What's happening?
The serious learning disability,
they talk
the human
about
side
that.
of him. Those humans.
That's it. Yeah. Okay, so let's talk about what Yaphet managed to do by squeezing through places that only he and a child would fit. Can we talk about how Jeffrey's tubes are a way better idea than Orville tubes?
So much better. Like a body can fit in there?
Yeah.
That's a key.
It's
I feel like
quarters.
that's key.
Does every ship require a Yaphet for this purpose?
This is what I don't understand.
And
how
would
are they
you want
going
a
to get
backup Yaphet?
How are they going to
that's
get to
right.
stuff? How do they get to stuff? There's only one Yaphet.
Because there's tubes in there, and it seems like those tubes are designed to be modular and switched, but who's going to switch them?
So everything's like remote from outside of there, I guess.
Or you send your Roomba in there to fix something. I don't know. What is the point of these little tubes? It just seems like it's a way for
Maybe they have Ant-Man technology. They get really small.
Shrink everything down.
How? Because then they wouldn't have they tried to use it.
It's also the most dangerous thing.
Because
Because if you've got a hull breach over there, but every room is interconnected by these little pipes, it's gonna vacuum your entire ship because you've just got these dumb little ports everywhere that aren't actually useful.
You need to have children and stunt their growth, and they have to be on every
Unix.
Child labor, that does it. Now, I really enjoyed the way Yaphet attacked one of the Kalons.
Yes.
And just on the topic of Ant-Man, went into Iron Man's armor and just messed with it.
Obliterated.
Yeah. And then came out the other side, sort of messed up.
Yeah.
But, it only took him a few minutes to recover. And we then got to really deliver on that. Yaphet is now an engineering expert on Kalons. He can turn them off and he can turn them on.
True. Yeah.
And so it's interesting to think that as much as Victor Garber wanted there to be an off switch on Isaac, which there's one on Data, and that moment where, and now a man will turn him off, when Riker turns off Data, that's what I was thinking the whole time. He's like, we want an off switch on that, dangerous guy who has guns in his head.
Yeah, it's nasty.
Yeah.
Laura uses that switch. It's really nasty stuff. Yeah.
And now, what did you think about Mercer standing his ground and saying, no, that is why the Kalons revolted, treating them like slaves, like things with an off switch? Did you think Mercer made the right call?
I don't know that he made the right call overall, but I feel like that argument is a good argument to have into figuring out what they should do next. Like, I feel like, yeah, maybe it's not the right call. Maybe him taking responsibility. I don't even know what taking responsibility means.
For the next attempted genocide, I guess.
Yeah, but however, I do think, right? But I do think that to have that as an entry into a discussion of why they shouldn't do it is a really good point. You know, that they shouldn't have that power over. It is kind of, look at how creepy it is when someone turns off Data. It's really uncomfortable.
It's also a good device to keep him on the show to see how he evolves. Like, they could do some really interesting things with that.
Maybe they'll put an emotion chip in him.
Yeah, something, you know.
Yeah, maybe.
Now, one thing I thought was interesting was a few episodes ago, we were all talking about this idea of peace with the Krill, diplomatic relations with the Krill, and could this ever happen?
Yes.
And we have now found the mechanism by which it is happening.
A mechanism that we predicted here.
It's like you kind of know what's going on.
Yeah, didn't you say something about how they might become allies because of this? Yeah. So.
And it worked out nicely, I gotta say. It dovetailed in a way I like, and I'm really hoping that this sort of difficulty they're beginning to have with the Moclans turns into being able to make peace with the religious zealots of the Krill, and then having problems with the Moclans as they leave the Union. It will be interesting to watch that kind of, essentially what happens with Romulans and Cardassians and Klingons in Deep Space Nine.
Yes.
Watching which ones are allies, which ones are not. I mean, none of them join the Federation. They're just allies.
Right.
And so the Moclans are in the Union. So to watch them separate from the Union would be interesting. I know that we're going to be going into next week. We start playing with diplomatic relations with the Krill. So it'll be very interesting to see where they go, because topping this episode is going to be difficult.
Yes.
Identity Part 1 and Part 2 was like, that's how you end a season in Star Trek. And that's how you start a season in Star Trek. And we just got it in the back half of this season.
Yeah.
And I think it's going to be very interesting to see what they use to finish this season. Because last season just kind of ended, which is a very TNG choice, where they just ended the season with Neutral Zone in the first season.
Yeah, it's a very, like, early 90s choice.
Yeah, absolutely.
For television, you know.
And the funny thing is, that episode of Neutral Zone gets us back to this idea of the Borg, because Neutral Zone was going to be the first introduction of the Borg.
Yes.
But it just sort of fizzled out, and they made it into a single episode instead of a two-parter. And so here we are on the Orville, getting to watch this Borg Best of Both Worlds, Wolf 359 sort of dovetail happen. And you can really see the echo of, like, what Brandon Braga has been raised in with Star Trek, with TNG, with the sort of classic Roddenberry all the way through to Voyager and Enterprise.
If I were to plan this season and have that episode happen, I would just have a random episode next week.
Yeah.
That was a Star Trek episode, completely episodic, not having no connection to anything else.
Just send Mercer to his brother's vineyard, and then he just hangs out and makes wine.
I would just do a little drop in there, and like, just to break it up, just to be like, okay, like, you know, reset things, and still have it be Star Trek, but just drop in something.
I really feel like
that would be my choice.
The fact that the show is called The Orville is difficult for me, because Mercer is starting to earn himself a better ship. The whole joke of The Orville is that this is a mid-level ship. But Mercer is consistently saving everyone's asses.
You really, like, you're in my head, because I thought the same thing. When, you know, they show that image of just Isaac by himself, and then you see the big insignia, and it says, you know, Planetary Union Orville, and I was like, that's the whole show, right? It's called that, right?
Yeah.
That might be a mistake.
Well, I mean, ultimately, they could get the Orville A if they blow up the Orville, and then need to replace it with a gargantuan, beautiful Excelsior-style, gorgeous ship.
I really thought they were
interesting to see if we get a new Orville.
I thought that was a possibility this episode. I was like,
because the ship got knocked around.
Yeah, and I was like, is it gonna explode?
You could see at the back. There was part of it. Part
some
of it
real
was still
damage.
smoldering.
Yeah,
but it's so
There's
tiny.
No sound in space, is there?
No, it doesn't.
They do that for us.
But they did a really good job in Battlestar Galactica of playing with there's no sound in space, and yet giving you the like sound of servos zooming into things like Battlestar, and really Firefly was where they started with that same visual effects company, Zoic. They really did a great job of playing with no sound in space. But what did we think about, on the topic of Battlestar?
Yeah.
Airlocking somebody. We got a dude spaced, and it looked like a red shirt, but that was orange.
Right. Yeah. Oh yeah. Well, I'm glad they had the guts to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I really thought they were gonna like maybe
Me too, because
whip out, and I was just like, no, you did it. Yes.
And it was good to see because they were going to. It really let you know how much danger Ty was in.
Yeah.
But what did you think about the spacing?
Watching
that's a Babylon 5 line. Yeah. What did you think about the airlocking?
Yeah.
It's always disturbing to watch.
Yes.
But I am glad that they did it because for the reasons you said, I was afraid that they were going to pull that punch. And then I thought, because, Orville's a comedy. But then, no, it's not just a comedy. We know that. So it was great because it heightened that aspect of it that is not always there, right? And so then it was good balance.
Yeah, with the exception of the P corner and the Top Gun jokes.
Yeah. And in the initial Gordon going to talk to them.
Yeah.
I don't think that Orville's a comedy. I don't think
anymore.
I don't think you can call the Orville a comedy.
The Orville's a straight sci-fi show.
Yes,
with the occasional joke.
But it changed. I mean, I think in the beginning, season 1 for sure, right, guys? It still was trying to figure out what genre it was. I love that it's settled into this now.
I think this is what Seth MacFarlane wants. Yeah. I think he's been like trying to
tell you what, Fox. Let's do a potty mouth show in space that slowly turns into Star Trek.
Especially since the way he played it. Like, he was a total straight man this entire episode.
Yeah. This was a good dramatic turn.
And he was really good.
But can we talk about the 13-button salute? And how incredibly dumb that entire choice... I mean, maybe that's why Mercer still gets to keep a crummy ship. That is the dumbest possible choice. They have downloaded your entire database.
The only thing that can change something like that is if somehow, while he was on Kalon, when Isaac was unconscious, like Tala changed everything, like sent a message and changed all their security.
What I was hoping was,
but that's across the Union. Sorry,
no problem. What I was hoping was because he was his pilot instructor, that they'd had some conversations, and I was hoping that his instructor had told him a story about something that had happened to him and how they got out of it. They got out of it or it was that event was, we called it this because it was so bad, and he would use something that only the two of them knew.
I thought that's where it was going too, because remember how his instructor said, "Well, you're doing this by yourself," kind of thing, and then he would say something like, "Oh, you know how I like to do something," and his instructor would be like, "That's not
at all.
That's not a thing that ever happened," and then be like, "Okay,
all right, goodbye."
Yeah, exactly.
It was kind of weird to me that as the ship was turning around, they didn't immediately send out a message. Like, you had a moment before you were blown up by the Kalon. And that would have been the sacrificial choice.
Yeah.
I am going to tell this ship something that's going to get them killed.
Yes.
And they know it.
Yeah.
And they're going to send that message out right away. And they didn't.
Exactly. This is my brain, Matt, and you you keep yours there. That's the first thing I thought that's the first thing I thought was just immediately when you hear that, I feel like they should have some sort of protocol where you hear 13 Brothers Salute and there's like a Union alert button. It's just like boom.
And I feel like going back to Battlestar Galactica, that should be something that only like commanders know. And it's not written down anywhere.
Yep.
It's just said from one person to another. Although it does remind me of the Next Generation episode Allegiance, where you've got that moment where the superior non-verbal aliens are telling everyone on the bridge what to do.
Yeah.
And through non-verbal cues, Picard manages to tell everyone what to do on the ship and then proves, haha, we're smarter than you think we are. You're not so great. And I thought we were about to get a moment like that.
And that would be great because in juxtaposing to robots like that don't have that kind of emotional connection.
Can't make a face at each other.
Yeah, they can't communicate in that way, but humans can't.
And obviously they have no Wi-Fi, so like they can't even do that. So it's like they're missing some key steps. Okay, so let's talk about time. And the fact that everything is cooler when you put the word time in front of it.
I do love that. Anyways.
It was pretty great. I enjoyed I enjoyed everything that happened with Tilly in this episode. I think she was used in all the right ways.
And Saru.
And Tilly and Saru.
When Saru was like, he shakes his head at her, and she knows. That was so funny to me, and so subtle. It wasn't like a heavy-handed joke.
No, it was great. And under all that makeup, to do something so subtle.
Yes, I know.
Only someone as experienced and brilliant as Doug Jones can pull off stuff like that. Because you look at someone like the character of Ariam is someone who I want to talk about.
Yes, we have to.
She has no expression on purpose. She's basically Isaac.
Yes.
And so the only thing we got to see today was a little twinkle in her eye.
Yeah.
Do we think do we think that the other probe that went through time and came back knowing everything about the universe, do we think that probe downloaded into Ariam?
Yes, that's what it looked like.
Yes.
Do we think Ariam has anything to do with the Red Angel?
Well, yeah, right? Why was it red? I think that's the implication.
Everything in this season is red. Have you noticed everything in last season was purpley blue, and everything in this season is red, right? Purpley blue. But everything in this season is red. Even when they're just bumping into a nebula that is not one of the angels.
Red.
It's red.
Yes.
It's like they only have one color every time, and I found it making things very confusing.
Yes.
Because there are 7 red things.
Yeah,
in the angel.
If apparently color doesn't seem to be thematic for them. They're just kind of it's just
seasonal.
Production wise, that's kind of weird. Like the production crew is not really thinking, oh well, maybe if we did this and telling us something through their part of the creative choice. Yeah,
like there's a way to make film and there's a way to make like throwaway network TV. Throwaway network TV does not think of those things.
Yes.
Film and a bingeable piece of prestige television thinks about these things.
Yeah, where you put these subtle markers so that people can dig into.
Like the use of the color red in The Sixth Sense. Like
you can differentiate too between. I think we were talking about another show once, Matt, where you said the 2 main female leads looked exactly the same, and it was impossible to follow them and get connected to them. So yes, I think there's a lot of red happening, but I think that the Ariam might have to do with the Red Angel, just because 2 or 3 times they mentioned, or at least once, Pike referred to Ty stating that the Red Angel might not be a force for good. And it happened just around, like right before that. So that's why I'm thinking that's what's going to happen. And Red also has to do with Telosians. It has a connection to the Telosians that I remember from Deep Space Nine. I don't know if you remember. Kira, it was, I remember the name of the episode.
Do it.
Guys, it's my first time. Probable cause!
All right.
Bring it.
And so it was just before Garrick's shop blew up. And so Kira and Bashir are talking, and Kira said, Doctor, something happened with the chemical that the air that the chemicals they breathe disintegrated, burned the carpet.
Yeah.
Yes. Oh, I'm sorry. I thought I told you that. Oh, and by the way, don't use the color red because it drives them crazy.
Yep.
And this is for the Telosians. And so I thought, I doubt that they're thinking that in that much in detail, but it was a delightful coincidence for us. Like us.
It would be good if they were using it and it all tied together. Would be great eventually. I wouldn't be upset about that.
I wouldn't, but they're putting red everywhere, so I feel like
but it is all over the place.
On the topic of red.
Oh, it's time.
Let's do it. Let's talk about whether these episodes trekked it or wrecked it. I mean, we're getting a lot of themes that are coming through episodes, seasons. We got to see that once again, Stamets is time proof. Like there are some interesting seasonal arcs and interseasonal arcs that are happening here. And is that what new Star Trek should be? Is that taking cues from Deep Space Nine? Because it sure is not taking cues from TNG. You can bet that Q being the beginning and end of TNG was a happy accident. Nobody had that planned.
It's a good plan.
7 years.
It delivered. It really delivered. And it's interesting to notice that there's no thematic element that matters in Voyager from beginning to end, from episode 1 to episode N. All that matters is they're home now. It's not like the caretaker was there at the beginning and at the end.
Yes.
It's not like the Ocampa were there at the beginning and the end. Voyager didn't even bother with that. Hell, Enterprise didn't even end. Enterprise stopped.
Yes.
So this idea
they did save Earth, didn't they?
In
the villains. They were
But in the last minute, they had to write themselves a season finale into a series finale, and Berman and Braga came up with a big holodeck romp. That's the worst way to end a series I can imagine.
I don't.
They jimmied an ending into that is
And
a shame to this day.
Really, yeah.
Sorry, friends.
Yeah.
Robbed the whole entire cast of their ending.
It turned it into a Riker Troy episode. Okay, so let's talk about Identity Part 2. Did this episode trek it, or did this episode wreck it? Sonia.
I think it trekked it.
Yeah?
I think it trekked it just because of the themes that they were discussing, you know, big themes, you know, species, how species interact, the union, you know, the members going in and out of union membership. It was, you know, the captain, Mercer, he's often a good Star Trek captain, but he was really today, there was, you know, a balance of seriousness and levity, and I just thought it worked. It worked as a Star Trek episode. I enjoyed it that way, even though it was a little bit lazy and sentimental in certain parts. But some of my favorite Star Trek
gets
episodes
pretty lazy
can
and
be,
sentimental.
Yeah, you like that, so I don't mind it.
Benya? Trekked it? Wrecked it? Identity 2.
It trekked it. Mm-hmm. I think I liked. Yeah, obviously, I'm a big fan of competency porn. Mm-hmm. It had a lot of that in this episode, and I liked Grayson. I often say that she's like the actual Star Trek captain. Yeah. She would be the captain if it was Star Trek. And I liked her diplomacy. I liked that she, even though Gordon was there, he was kind of like comic relief. I thought she was really diplomatic, and she made a lot of good points, and she was able to do that, cross that boundary with a really hard race to do that with, and bring out their humanity where they weren't human, which is to me very Star Trek, right? Like, in obviously Isaac's turn too, like the idea that you bring out humanity in others and that's your connection, to me is easily Star Trek.
Cool. I'm going to say that Identity 2 trekked it, but not by a very wide margin. And for me, it's because of the space battles. The space battles for me in Star Trek are always beautifully directed. You always know exactly what's happening because it's not just an explosion, it's a story, and the geography matters. And it mattered even more when the Krill showed up with a bunch of identical ships, and there was just too much of everything looking the same, and not a careful enough hand of the director in those visual effects moments. Granted, it's TV network, maybe they were in a rush and they just landed on where they landed, but I've seen some of the previs, and the previs would have been where you fix that. And they didn't.
I remember in DS9, some of those battle shots were beautiful, but that's because they knew when to pull out of focus and go into focus, and they knew, you know, there were levels, you know, and maybe the angles, man, and the different looking ships. I agree.
Even when they had them on the like when they were on the way to Earth, and the Orville went to kind of catch up with them. That was like a relief because all of a sudden
there was some geography.
And you could kind of put things in. But then as soon as the Krill got there, it got muddled again. Yeah.
I feel like in Deep Space Nine, you had a lot of good Defiant eye view of what was going on, and you knew it was the Defiant because it was the only ship that ever looked like that until they made another one to replace it.
But it still was the only one.
That was even then the only one. And I feel like you need an Orville eye view over the word Orville, because I couldn't tell you its registry number off the top of my head.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
It's not a 1701. I couldn't tell you the Defiance either because it's 5 digits long, too much. I couldn't even tell you Voyagers because it's 5 digits. Yeah. It's not the 1701.
Yeah.
It's out of my head. But I think the word Orville needs to be what we're seeing as we sort of dodge and weave. So we know we're with the Orville in that moment because there are, I think, larger ships. There are definitely smaller ships than the Orville, and we saw them. And we never knew that we were seeing them.
Right.
And I think this was such a beautiful chance to show us the fleet, and it just turned into a swath of white-gray with blue engines.
Yes.
And I'm disappointed in that because Star Trek's always better than that.
I agree.
Cool. Even Discovery's better than that, and they've done some really terrible fight scenes in Discovery. I don't want to remind anyone about the opening 2-parter of this series, but it was true trash. Okay, so now let's talk about Discovery. Okay. Let's talk about the fact that we got Spock. We got a temporal anomaly. We got a lot of Star Trekian things. In fact, we got V'ger, essentially, again, kinda. But very little of it is explained. And I want you to tell me if it trekked it and who the Red Angel is. Vanya.
Okay, I think it trekked it.
Yeah.
And it's, to me, another good balanced episode where it's like they managed to fit a lot in, but it's still like I knew it was happening. It wasn't too crazy. And we got Spock, which is always very like Star Trek to me, which is cool because I love Vulcans. And I like time. I always like when they play with time. Hopefully they don't like. I hope with the time thing they don't like do a bunch of time things and then erase it all. That would be that's a very Voyager thing. That's my
a terrible choice
with
yeah.
Voyager. But
Year of Hell.
It hurts. But I do think it's Star Trek. My theory for who the Red Angel is Michael Burnham. Yeah,
Okay.
that's right. Michael Burnham.
All right.
I said it here first. Her. She is it's me. Like I predicted that.
I like it.
But I think it's her.
Okay.
Because she's connected to everything having to do with Red Angel since she was a child. And I feel like it's future her coming back, and that's what her connection to Spock is too.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Discovery. What do you think, Sonia? Trekked it or wrecked it this week?
Trekked
and
it.
who's the angel?
Trekked it. I don't know. I hadn't thought about who the angel might be.
Off the cuff, let me hear your instinct of who you think it is.
Something to do with Giorgio. I don't know why. I thought something to do with Giorgio. I personally loved the mutiny with Giorgio and Leland.
Oh, yeah.
That was a delicious moment. That was fantastic. Even though that was a minor.
And I like that Leland got to be kind of lovely, and then you realize, oh no, he's actually being a bachelor. That was good.
And I like the fight sequence. Anyhow, go.
Yeah, and any opportunity to see Michelle Yeoh do kung fu, I'm in.
No,
But Sonequa Martin Green held her own for sure.
First of all, did you kill her? I loved it. I love the way that the two are interacting right now.
Yeah, this was, you're right, this was, I think, my favorite Giorgio Michelle Yeoh episode we've ever had.
I agree.
Yes.
Yeah, I really enjoyed her here.
Yeah.
And I like,
Please.
But when I really like how Burnham, when Sonequa hits her first, like when she's not ready, and she just want to make her look real. But also Michelle Yeoh, but also her comedic. Like it was very funny because she's like, okay, yeah, I got you. Yeah.
But then when Giorgio shoots at Burnham and it just like wings her, and she's like that face she made was just brilliant. Yeah, chef's kiss good. Absolutely.
But I also love the Star Trek elements like the temporal distortion. I like that stuff, and I like the way they used it. I really like that moment when Pike looks back, and he's the only one who can see him shooting at Tyler. And I thought, oh, that's weird. What the hell is happening? And then it turned out to be something else, though they were in the same position. I liked that. I even liked the Stamets thing. Like, normally, the Stamets is associated with the mycelial network, which I can't relate to. But this thing where the tardigrade has affected his DNA such that he's not affected by it.
I'm into
I like it. I like that
I
device.
gotta tell you, I'm into the Stamets Ex Machina. I love that he saves everything. It's like, don't worry, I'm part water bear. Watch me fix this.
It's also, I thought that part was very clever too, when you don't know, and I like that Pike kept it to himself.
Yes.
He's like, wait a second, I don't know what that is.
I don't know why that happens.
And then he remembers it, and he's just like, oh, okay, I see what's going on here. Yeah. But I thought that was really clever how they went back to that. It wasn't a throwaway moment where we're just like, we see it, but then it's not played right.
Yeah, it was really important, which I definitely appreciated. So, would you say this episode trekked it? Trekked it. Yes. All right, cool. I'm also going to agree. I'm going to say this episode trekked it, and it trekked it, I think, more solidly even than the Orville did.
I have to agree with that. For sure.
Right? And I don't know, man. I've been shitting on Kurtzman a lot. And I still think he doesn't understand aspect ratios in TV and wants to make movies, but I think we're getting Star Trek consistently right now, and it seems to be his fault.
Even we got a log this week.
Yes, that was my first note.
I was like, have they been watching?
Yes, that's right.
Yes. It's like somebody last week was like, oh shit, let's get some ADR, dub that in.
You can put that in after, and I was like, watch a Trek record because we've been talking about that.
Yeah, we've been shit talking your lack of logs. But
it opened up with a log.
It worked.
And Michael's, which I loved, Commander's log.
Yeah.
I just feel like Discovery for me this season is earning their salt. You know, they're like, but let's see if they can keep it up.
Yeah, and I'm looking forward to seeing what they keep doing with Ariam, because they replaced that actress, but they didn't take that actress off the show.
Right.
Both actresses both the one who is currently Arium and was previously Arium were in an episode together where the old Arium didn't have to have the makeup on. She was just playing some other character. But I think it's interesting that this season where we're getting to see Arium do more, it's a different actor. I've heard some interesting things about the actress who used to play Arium having no real idea what she was supposed to be until the show started. And wasn't able to wrap her head around how she is related to Data on the timeline, why she has what she is. There are people who are saying she's an android, but she's listed in some canon as a cybernetically enhanced human. To be honest, we don't really know what she is. To be totally clear, she hasn't said, hey, man, I got a human heart, I'm a tin man. Like, there's no point where she's explained what she is.
Yeah.
But we've now seen that whatever got into their probe is now into Arium in some way. So maybe they hired an actor that they think can really handle what they're going to have Arium do this year.
Yeah.
I know that actor, and she's pretty interesting, so maybe that's what they've done. Or maybe the old actor was like, get this makeup off my face, I am done, hire some other person who looks a bit like me.
That's tough work.
Yeah.
And that makeup, I like that makeup.
So
I like
really
the
cool.
way it moves.
And doesn't move.
Yeah, exactly. Like, that.
Was it just her eyes that shifted slightly, or because it looked like she smiled, but maybe not. Maybe that was it was
a subtle, interesting thing that happened on her face.
It's like a subtle stretch, but it's not a stretch. I can't even explain it.
But you know what? If you were shooting a human face in 16:9 instead of anamorphic, you might have seen more of it.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, Kurtzman, fix your aspect ratio.
Because we feel like you're listening.
Yeah.
So
work on that one while you're at it. Because whatever lenses you're shooting on you're probably just black boxing that out. You're probably letterboxing it. So give it back.
Work on that one while you're at it.
Yeah, you got the logs right.
Yes.
You've got the Star Trek-ish feeling right.
The Section 31 story interaction with her, that was interesting. I thought it was very suspenseful. I like what they did with Section 31 in this episode.
Yeah, I hope Michelle Yeoh's character.
For the badge.
Yeah. Oh god, stop! Keep the badge on you, for Christ's sake. But I feel like whatever they're doing with Giorgio, hopefully she winds up taking out Leland, and then, against any good sense, she's then in charge of Section 31 or in charge of that ship.
Yeah.
And that might be her spinoff.
I want that to happen, even if it doesn't make sense.
Oh my god, guys, if Giorgio's in charge of Section 31 and it's all about... That's going to be great.
That'd be pretty alright. Get Tyler in there. I'd watch a show with those two characters, for sure.
Yeah, I think so too. Because Tyler, actually, too, he seems different. Was he speaking in Klingon when he was trapped?
It kind of sounded like it. It's hard to tell whether you're choking or have a mouth appliance in because the Klingon is so muffled on this show, but it could have been Klingon.
I felt like he was speaking in Klingon. It's interesting. I like that conversation with him and Pike in the turbolift. When
again, they show the interior of a turbolift. Which doesn't make any sense because it looks like they're in a like ridiculous coal mine.
I didn't know
empty space.
I almost called it an elevator. I'm so confused. Anyway, because it's not. Anyway, I did like that conversation when he called him a bad penny. It was very funny. But also, I like that Pike said when he said, "Oh, don't you know the war's over?" And he said, "My beef isn't with Klingons." Like, I like that he indicated it's not about Klingons, it's about you. You straight up murdered somebody.
You murdered somebody here, and there's no ifs, ands, or buts around that.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, he's back, sure, but you still murdered him.
Yeah. The only one thing I didn't love about that Pike was given to do in this episode was that he admitted to Ash or Tyler that he was right about Pike's own motivations and that he needed to prove something to himself. I actually thought that made Pike look a little weak. That he made himself vulnerable or agreed with Tyler.
I feel like I liked the fact that he admitted a vulnerability because I feel like that makes a better leader. I don't like how he did it or where he did it.
Yeah, I don't like that he did it to him.
The location and how he did it was I felt like it lost what it should have been, but I do like the idea that somebody as in his powerful position can say, yeah, I feel crappy about this, and
it's kind of nice to see.
Yeah,
because if the Defense Against the Dark Arts pattern continues, we've only got a few more episodes with Pike, and then he'll be gone. It'll be interesting to see if we wind up next week with Pike anywhere near the planet
Talos.
Yes, the planet that General Order 7 has stopped anyone from being allowed to go to under penalty of death. It'll be fascinating to see who goes there and what happens to them while they're there.
But does that mean we have to let go of Pike? And then what will we do about our thirst?
Yes, our need for Anson. Yeah, it's gonna be hard. I mean, this is a great season with a great captain, and hopefully next season, which has been greenlit, there will be a third season of Discovery. I'm curious what's gonna happen next season. Will they just keep having a new foster dad? It's just like, this is how you make a sandwich in my house now, and it's just like every time there's a new dad.
Funny. And will we are we gonna get to know the characters more? Because it's like we've gotten to know the characters' names a little bit more. We know there's Detmer there and Owo.
Yeah.
And
Ariam, we can kind of say right now.
Yeah, but in the football field of Bridges, are we gonna get closer?
Is it gonna feel smaller? It's still like, can you give me a report? It's still a bit nuts. Report. But I've got to say, this episode made it feel less like a fluke that last week was good.
Yeah.
And so I'm really hoping we have hit some kind of stride, and maybe from here to the end of this season, we're going to have some good Star Trek.
And I feel like they're giving Orville a run for their money. Orville has to catch up a bit on some things.
I gotta say, when we get to the end of this season, it'll be interesting to compare how many Trekkets and how many Reckets, because it's been sort of in sync.
Yes.
There have been rare occasions where one of them came out ahead of the other. A crap Orville week has also been a crap Discovery week frequently, and the opposite has held true. So we're going to be keeping the tally going and figuring out who's done better season over season and which season comes out on top when we get to the end. But next week, we get some more Krill. We find out what's happening on Talos. We'll find out. And we will see you next week.